Welcome to Sleeping Therapy by Emma, where words soften like candle wax and stories become gentle hands to lower your eyelids. I am Emma, your keeper of quiet dailies and guardian of the threshold between wakefulness and dreams. This is a place for surrender, for untying the knots in your shoulders, the thoughts racing like startled deer. Breathe now, deeper, slower. Let the weight of the day sink into the earth beneath you. You are safe here, you are held. Tonight we drift back through centuries of frost and starlight, to a time when winter wasn't just a season, but a long whispering shadow that tested the very soul. Imagine biting cold that turned breath to clouds of silver. Imagine nights so deep and long they seemed endless. How did the simplest souls endure? Not lords in stone castles with roaring hearths, but peasants. Hands cracked from toil, hearts humble as the earth they tilled. Their warmth wasn't found in gold, but in grit, and quiet wisdom passed like a precious ember from palm to palm. We step softly now into a small cottage crouched under heavy sky. Smell the wood smoke threading the icy air. See the faint orange glow behind thick shutters. Push the low door open. Feel the shift. The outside world is a howling beast, but here is a fortress made of breath and endurance. A packed earth floor, walls woven from branches and packed with mud and straw. Overhead, dried herbs hang like forgotten prayers. And in the center, the hearth. A fire, small but fiercely tended, its light dancing on weary faces. A grandmother murmurs an old song, her voice as rough and warm as a woolen blanket. Children nestle in nests of dried ferns and sheepskin, their eyes heavy. A pot simmers, water, barley, maybe a scrap of salted pork. This is how they survived the cruelest nights, not alone, together, shoulder to shoulder, sharing warmth like a secret, sharing stories to keep the dark at bay. They knew a truth we often forget. Warmth isn't just fire. It's the body beside you. It's the shared silence. It's the stubborn refusal to let the cold win. So settle deeper, dear listener. Let the chill outside only make the warmth within you brighter. Imagine the scratch of wool against your skin. Taste the smoky air. Hear the winds lament beyond these walls, while inside only the crackle of the fire, the steady breath of sleepers, and my voice. Your anchor in the ancient dark. Close your eyes. Drift back to the hearth. Let its humble, stubborn light carry you down into soft, dreamless peace. This is your story tonight. Your whispered lullaby against the cold. Close your eyes now, my beautiful dreamers. Feel the weight of your own blankets, soft and safe. Breathe deep, and let your mind drift far away from this moment. We are traveling back through centuries of frost and starlight. Tonight, we visit a small village sleeping under a blanket of snow deeper than any you've known. The year is long forgotten, but the cold. Oh, the cold is a living thing. It bites the air, turning breath into clouds of silver mist that hang frozen in the still darkness. The world is painted in shades of gray and white, silent except for the mournful song of the wind as it prowls around humble homes, whispering of the long, dark hours still to come. See that cottage there, nestled between ancient snow-laden oaks? Its roof of thick thatch wears a heavy cap of white. Smoke, thin and precious, curls from a simple hole in the roof, fighting the icy air. This is where our story breathes tonight. Push open the low, heavy door, feel the rough wood beneath your imagined touch, and step inside, dear listener. Leave the howling wolf-wind outside. Here is a different world. Smell it first. Wood smoke, deep and ancient, woven through with the damp scent of packed earth, the sweet dry aroma of stored herbs hanging from the rafters, and beneath it all, the warm animal smell of sheepskins. It's not the perfume of kings. It's the smell of endurance, of life stubbornly clinging on. The space is small, lit only by the fierce, golden heart beating in the room's center, the hearth. It's not grand. A simple circle of stones, blackened by generations of fires, supporting an iron pot hanging over the flames. The light flickers and dances, painting moving shadows on walls made of woven branches packed thickly with mud and straw. Wattle and daub. See the glints of straw poking through? They tried to plug the gaps, stuffing moss and rags into every crack they could find. But the winter's icy fingers are cunning. They find their way in, whispering chilling secrets across the hard-packed earth floor. 10 souls fill this humble fortress against the cold. Not a family by blood alone, but by the shared necessity of survival. There's Gareth, broad-shouldered, his face lined with seasons of toil under sun and snow. His hands, resting on his knees near the fire, are large and scarred, testament to his work as the village smith and plowman when the earth was in frozen iron. Beside him, leaning into his solid warmth, sits his wife, Anya. Her eyes, reflecting the firelight, hold a quiet watchfulness, a constant calculation of fuel, food, and the needs of the small bodies huddled near. On her lap, wrapped in a threadbare cloak that was once vibrant, sleeps little Tom, perhaps 4 winters old. His breath comes soft and even against her neck, a small island of peace. Near the wall, trying to press her thin shoulder against a drafty seam, is Alara, Gareth, and Anya's daughter. 7 winters have etched a surprising solemnity onto her young face, though a spark of curiosity still lives in her eyes as she watches the flames. Old Tom the plowman, whose own meager hut succumbed to the snow's weight, sits on a low stool, his gnarled hands extended towards the precious heat. A wet, rattling cough shakes his frame now and then, a sound that speaks of cold deep in the bones. Nestled almost invisibly beside him is Mara, a tiny girl orphaned by the autumn fever. Her large eyes watch everything, saying little, absorbing the warmth and the presence of others like a fragile plant seeking weak winter sun. And presiding over the simmering pot, her movements slow but precise, is Grandmother Agnes. Her face is a map of wrinkles, each line telling a story of sun, wind, and survival. Her eyes, though faded, hold the sharpness of flint and the deep warmth of banked coals. She stirs the thick porridge within the pot, barley, dried peas, a precious few shreds of salted pork fat, releasing their meager richness into the steam that rises like a grateful sigh. Listen beneath the sigh of the wind outside, beneath the crackle and pop of the burning wood, beneath the soft rhythm of sleeping breaths, you can almost hear the cold itself. It presses against the walls, a vast, hungry presence. It seeps up through the earth floor, numbing toes, even through worn leather boots. It snakes through the gaps in the walls, touching cheeks and necks with icy fingertips. This is not the gentle chill of a modern winter's night, my dear dreamers. This is a cold that whispers of endings, a cold that demands constant battle. Watch Gareth now. His attention is fixed on the fire. It's more than warmth. It's life itself flickering in that circle of stones. He carefully selects a brick of dried peat, fuel painstakingly gathered from the boglands in the kinder months, and places it just so amongst the burning oak branches, not too close to the fiercest flames, where it would burn too fast, vanishing in a greedy rush of heat, not too far, where the cold creeping inwards might snuff its glow. He nudges a thick, gnarled oak log, a salvaged treasure from a fallen giant of the forest, deeper into the heart of the fire. This log is the anchor. It will burn slow and deep, holding the heat through the blackest hours before dawn. His tending isn't haste, it's ritual. Respect. This, beautiful dreamers, is their first shield against the consuming dark, the hearth's vigil. A vigil watched with hands roughened by labor and hearts heavy with the responsibility of keeping the tiny son alive. Alara shivers, drawing her thin shawl tighter. The draft near the wall is persistent. Anya catches her daughter's eye and nods towards the far end of the cottage, away from the worst of the sneaking chills. More straw for the bed nook, little light, Anya murmurs, her voice soft but clear in the firelit hush. Alara scrambles up, a small figure moving with purpose. She gathers armfuls of dry, golden straw from a stack near the wall, straw carefully stored since the autumn harvest, smelling faintly of summer sun and dusty fields. Beneath the cottage's sloping roof lies a shallow, stone-lined pit, the bed nook. Earlier, stones warmed by the fire's edge were placed here. Alara layers the fresh straw thickly over them, patting it down to create a yielding, insulating mattress. Over this, Anya and grandmother Agnes spread the sheepskins, coarse, greasy with lanolin, smelling powerfully of the animals that gave them, but oh, so much warmer than bare earth or stone. Finally come the thick woolen blankets, woven by grandmother's hands over countless summers, the pattern simple but imbued with the weight of care. This is their second shield, the nest against the night, a sanctuary within a sanctuary, lined with the earth's stored warmth and the flock's rough gift. Old Tom coughs again, a deeper, more wrenching sound this time. Little Mara, silent as a shadow, moves. She picks up a small, chipped wooden cup and carries it carefully to the old man. She doesn't speak, just offers it up with solemn eyes. Inside, a small measure of mead glints dark gold in the firelight. Honey transformed by time and patience into liquid warmth. A tiny store saved for the cruel heart of winter. Tom's knotted hand closes gently around the cup. His grimace softens as he sips. It's not enough to banish the cold in his bones, but it's a small sun blooming low in his belly, a fleeting defiance against the chill. Think little bird. he rasps, his voice like stones grinding together. Mara simply nods, retreating to her spot beside him, drawing comfort from his nearness. Grandmother Agnes lifts the ladle from the pot. Thick, steaming porridge drips back into the cauldron. "Supper," she announces, her voice cutting through the wind's low moan like a knife through fog. It's a signal. The small group shifts, drawing closer to the hearth's radiant circle. Not just for the food, beautiful dreamers, but for the heat. Shoulders press against shoulders. Knees touch knees. Little Tom stirs slightly on Anya's lap but doesn't wake. Alara settles between Gareth and Anya. Mara tucks herself between old Tom and grandmother Agnes. Body heat mingles. Breath steams in the firelight, merging. This closeness, this shared physical warmth, this silent understanding that survival is a communal act, is their third shield, the warmth of the hive, a living barrier against the isolating, bone-deep freeze. Wooden bowls, worn smooth by generations of hands, are passed around. Grandmother ladles the hot porridge, simple, hearty, smelling of earth and sustenance. Gareth breaks a dense, dark loaf of rye bread, baked long weeks ago and stored like treasure. Pieces are shared. No one takes more than their measured portion. They eat slowly, savoring the precious heat spreading from their bellies outwards more than the plain taste. It's fuel, it's fortification. It's a bulwark being built inside each body against the siege of the night. Alara, her bowl scraped clean, looks up at grandmother Agnes. The firelight catches the hope in her young eyes, a fragile light in the pervasive gloom. "Tell the story, Gran?" She whispers, the words barely louder than the settling fire. The one about the sun's promise. A plea not just for entertainment, but for comfort. For a reminder that the darkness will end. Grandmother Agnes nods slowly. She settles back against a sack of grain, her gaze fixed on the flames as if seeing ancient pictures dance within them. When she speaks, her voice is lower now, a rhythmic murmur that weaves itself into the crackle of the fire and the constant sigh of the wind. It's a sound like stone smoothed by a river, like dry leaves rustling. "Long ago," she begins. "So long ago the hills themselves were young. Winter wasn't just a season then, my chickadees. It was a giant, a cruel white giant made of ice and hunger." Her words paint pictures in the smoky air. A brave maiden, small as Alara but fierce as the hearth fire, setting out on an impossible journey. A cloak woven not of wool, but of stolen starlight, glittering cold yet holding warmth within. A path through forests frozen solid, rivers turned to glass. A towering castle carved from glacial ice, where the winter giant held the captured sun in a cage of diamond frost. The desperate bargain, the stolen crystal of the giant's frozen heart, and she held it high, this shard of cold malice. Grandmother Agnes's voice drops to a whisper, drawing her listeners closer as the first faint, feeble rays of the true sun peeked over the world's frozen edge. The crystal caught the light and shattered, not into nothing, beautiful dreamers, but into 1,000 sparks. Each spark flew out, becoming a promise whispered on the wind, carried in the meltwater, buried in the thawing earth. The sun will return. Winter roared. Oh, how he roared. But the promise was stronger. The light grew, slowly, surely, warming the waiting world. As the ancient words weave their spell, Gareth rises silently. His role as keeper of the flame never ceases. He takes a long, fire-blackened stick and gently shifts the oak log at the back. A shower of sparks erupts upwards, tiny, defiant stars against the cottage's smoky ceiling. He adds a few carefully dried cow pats, fuel gathered diligently from summer pastures, burning with a slow, earthy, sustaining heat. Then he moves like a quiet shadow around the single room. He checks the rag-stuffed cracks, pressing a wad of moss more firmly into a gap near where Alara had sat. He adjusts the heavy, stiffened hide curtain covering the doorway, ensuring its seal against the drafts. He peers up at the smoke hole where a patch of sky shows the icy, uncaring glitter of true stars. His face, in the flickering light, is grim, etched with the weight of his vigil. He will not sleep this night. He is the keeper of the flame. His watch is the thread holding back the dark for all within these walls. Grandmother's story works its magic. Alara's head nods, then rests gently against Anya's arm. Her breathing deepens, slows. The tension in little Tom's sleeping form eases further. Even old Tom's wheezing seems less ragged, lulled by the rhythm of the tale and the warmth of Mira leaning trustingly against him. The story wasn't just words, beautiful dreamers. It was a lifeline, a memory of warmth etched onto their souls. A defiant spark of hope against the crushing weight of the endless seeming night. This was their fourth shield, stories like embers, carrying the essential heat of belief, of continuity, of a world beyond the frozen now. Outside, the wind finds a new ferocity. It shrieks like a banshee, rattling the heavy wooden shutters covering the single small window. A sudden, stronger gust finds a hidden flaw in the wall near the bed nook. The draft surges in, making the single tallow candle flame gutter wildly, threatening to plunge the corner into darkness. Little Mara gasps, a tiny sound of primal fear quickly stifled. But Gareth is already there. He drops to one knee, his large hand finding the gap, pressing a fresh wad of moss, and rags deep into the breach with the heel of his palm. He doesn't speak. He just turns his head, catches Mara's wide, frightened eyes in the flickering light, and gives her shoulder a single, firm, reassuring squeeze. I am here. The flame holds. You are safe. The wind's fury, though still loud, suddenly feels distant, less personal, less like an invader about to break down the door. The shield holds. Grandmother Anna's story reaches its gentle conclusion. And so the promise is kept year after turning year. The giant sleeps, but the sun returns. Light follows dark. Warmth follows cold. Remember this, little sparks. Always remember. A collective sigh, soft as falling snow, moves through the huddled group. Anya carefully shifts the now deeply sleeping Tom, preparing to carry him to the warm dust. Alara is gently guided to her feet, blinking sleepily. Mara helps old Tom, his stiff limbs groaning, to rise and shuffle towards the beckoning warmth of the sheepskins. Grandmother Agnes performs the final vital ritual of the evening. Using the long stick, she carefully pulls the glowing embers and ash towards the front of the hearth. She covers them lightly with a fresh layer of crumbled peat, not smothering, but banking the fire. This precious core will smolder slowly, safely, through the long, quiet hours, preserving fuel, holding the seed of warmth ready to be coaxed back into full flame when the deepest cold before dawn inevitably comes. The cottage settles into a deeper quiet. The wind still moans its ancient song outside. The cold still presses its frozen face against the walls. But inside the circle of stones, inside the nest of straw and wool, inside the circle of shared breath and watched flame, 10 souls begin the slow drift into sleep. The shields are raised. The vigil is set. The long night's heart has only just begun to beat, beautiful dreamers. But for now, within these humble walls, warmth and weary hope hold sway. Let your own breath sink with theirs. Slow, deep, feeling the safety they fought so hard to create. The fire crackles softly. The wind is a lullaby outside the walls. Rest now, rest deep within the hearth's embrace. The story continues, but sleep is gently pulling you towards its own warm shores. The deep quiet settles over the cottage now, beautiful dreamers. A different kind of quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the holding of breath. The wind, our constant companion outside, has dropped to a low, mournful sigh, scraping icy fingers along the thatch. Inside, the dominant sound is the soft, rhythmic breathing of sleepers nestled in the bed nook, little Tom's light puff, Alara's deeper sigh. Old Tom's rasp softened by slumber, Mura's near-silent inhale, and beneath it, the quieter, vital sound, the faint hiss crackle of the banked fire, a secret whispered by glowing embers beneath their blanket of peat. This is the fragile peace won by shields raised, the hearth's vigil, the worm nest, the hive's closeness, the ember stories. But the night is long, my dear listeners. The coldest hours are yet to come, pressing their frozen weight against the walls, testing every crack, every weary eyelid. Gareth remains motionless by the hearth. He is a statue carved from shadow and firelight, his eyes reflecting the dull red glow beneath the ash. His broad back is a dark wall facing the door, the potential breach. He doesn't shift, doesn't fidget. His energy is conserved, focused entirely on listening to the fire's whisper. Is the hiss steady? Is the faint heat radiating still? Listening to the wind. Does its pitch change, hinting at a renewed assault? Listening to the subtle shifts in the breathing behind him, a catch in old Tom's throat, a whimper from little Tom. He is the sentinel in the silent watch, the keeper's vigil. Anya, beside him on the hard-packed earth, isn't truly sleeping. Her body rests, curled near the hearth's residual warmth, but her mind drifts in the shallow waters between wakefulness and dreams. She hears the wind's lament. She feels deep in her bones the relentless cold seeping upwards, a slow tide. She counts the precious fuel stacked against the far wall in her mindless eye, the remaining peat bricks, the few smaller logs, the precious basket of dried dung cakes. Will it last? Did they gather enough? The gnawing anxiety is a familiar coldness inside her, colder than the draft under the door. Her hand rests lightly on Gareth's leg, a point of contact, a silent acknowledgement of his lonely watch. Shared burden, silent understanding. Outside, the world is utterly transformed. The snow has stopped falling, leaving a landscape of profound, crystalline stillness under a sky ablaze with stars. So many stars, unimaginable to modern eyes, undimmed by city glow. They blaze like icy diamonds scattered across black velvet. The moon, a thin, sharp sliver of silver, casts weak, elongated shadows from the sleeping cottages and skeletal trees. It's breathtakingly beautiful, this frozen nightscape, and utterly, terrifyingly lethal. The cold has deepened, sharpened. It's a physical force now, settling over the village like an invisible, suffocating shroud. The air itself crackles faintly when you breathe it. Could you breathe it out there for long? It would freeze the moisture in your lungs. This is the hour when the world feels most ancient, most indifferent. The hour when the fragile bubble of warmth inside the wattle and daub walls feels most precious, most desperately held. Within the bed nest movement, little Tom stirs, a small whimper escaping his lips. The stored warmth in the stones beneath the straw has faded, overcome by the creeping chill of the long hours. He shivers, instinctively burrowing deeper into the sheepskins, seeking Anya's scent, her vanished warmth. Alara, in her deeper child sleep, murmurs something indistinct, pulling a thick woolen blanket tighter over her head. Old Tom coughs in his sleep, a dry, painful sound, whereas eyes flicker open in the near darkness. She sees Gareth's broad back silhouetted against the hearth's faint glow, a dark mountain against the lesser dark. Seeing him there, still and watchful, she closes her eyes again, a tiny sigh escaping her. Safety perceived. Gareth hears the small sounds from the nest. He doesn't turn, but his listening intensifies. He knows the rhythms of his family's sleep, the language of their nighttime stirrings. Tom's whimper speaks of encroaching cold in the nest. Slowly, silently, Gareth rises. His stiff muscles protest, cold having seeped into his joints during his long stillness. He moves like a great bear rousing, careful not to disturb the delicate embers of the fire or the sleepers. He goes to the stack of fuel, not to the precious logs or peat yet. He selects a few dried dung cakes. Humble fuel, earthy, but it burns slow and steady, giving off a deep, penetrating heat. He kneels by the hearth, his movements economical, practiced. With a long, hooked stick, he gently parts the layer of ash covering the banked fire. Beneath, the embers glow a fierce, sullen red like the heart of a dormant dragon. He carefully places the dung cakes onto this glowing heart. For a moment, nothing. Then a tendril of smoke, then another. A tiny flame licks up, hesitant, tasting the dry fuel. Then another. Slowly, steadily, the new fire begins to breathe. It's not a roaring blaze that would be wasteful, dangerous in the low, smoky space. It's a careful rekindling, a gentle coaxing of warmth back into the world, the fire's second breath. The new flames cast a stronger, if still modest, light. It washes over the faces in the bed nook. Anya's eyes are open now, watching Gareth. She sees the concentration in his profile, the absolute focus on the task of nurturing the tiny flames. The increased warmth radiates outwards almost immediately, a subtle wave pushing back the insistent cold that had begun to claim the edges of the room. Little Tom's shivering eases. He sighs, a sound of pure comfort, and sinks back into deeper sleep. Alara's murmuring ceases. Gareth remains kneeling, tending the fledgling fire, ensuring it catches properly, burns evenly. This small act, adding fuel, reawakening the heat, is repeated several times through the long watches of the night. It's the pulse of their survival, the rhythm of resistance. Anya rises now, silently. Her rest is over. She moves to the covered pail near the door, where fresh water fetched before dusk sits, its surface skimmed with a thin layer of ice that cracks as she dips a small cup in. She takes it to Grandmother Agnes, who is also stirring, her old bones feeling the cold's depth more keenly than most. The old woman accepts the water with a nod, sipping slowly. No words are needed. Anya then moves to check the children, tucking the sheepskins more snugly around Tom, smoothing Alara's hair from her forehead. She pauses by Mara, who looks up at her with wide, awake eyes. Anya offers a small, tired smile and touches the girl's cheek lightly, a reassurance. You belong here. You are warm. The unspoken care. Grandmother Agnes, fortified by the water and the slight increase in warmth, shifts her position. Her gaze travels around the small cottage, taking inventory in the dim light. Her eyes linger on the dwindling stack of fuel. They rest on old Tom's sleeping form, noting the slight bluish tinge to his lips despite the fire's renewal. They flick to the rag-stuffed cracks in the walls. This is the wisdom of countless winters, beautiful dreamers. Not just knowing how to survive, but seeing the fraying edges before they unravel. She catches Anya's eye and gives a small, almost imperceptible nod towards the remaining grain sack. A silent instruction, porridge soon. They'll need the inner warmth before dawn's coldest bite. The keeper of wisdom. Time stretches, elastic and heavy. The stars wheel slowly across the patch of sky visible through the smoke hole. The moon's sliver has set, leaving the world outside in utter star-filled blackness. This is the nadir, the deepest point of the night. The cold outside intensifies further, a crushing grip. Inside, despite the fire, the breath of the sleepers hangs in visible silvery plumes near their faces. Frost feathers its way across the inside of the shutters near the bed nook, intricate, deadly lace. Gareth adds another dung cake, then a small split log. The flames leap briefly, casting long, dancing shadows that make the cottage seem larger, stranger. For a moment, the faces of the sleepers look ancient, carved from stone in the flickering light. The hour of the wolf. It's during this deepest watch that the threat comes. Not from outside, but from within. Old Tom's breathing changes. The familiar rasp deepens, becomes a desperate, wet rattle. It builds, shaking his frail frame, tearing him from sleep into a fit of violent, body-racking coughs. He struggles to sit up, gasping for air that won't come easily. Mara jolts awake, frightened. Alara stirs, murmuring in confusion. Little Tom whimpers, disturbed by the harsh sound. Gareth is there instantly, his silent vigil broken. He supports the old man's thin shoulders, helping him sit forward. Anya is beside him, a cup of the now tepid water in her hand. Grandmother Agnes is already rummaging near her sleeping place, pulling out a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside are dried leaves, coltsfoot maybe, or thyme, gathered in summer for precisely this purpose. She crushes a few between her fingers, the sharp, herbal scent cutting through the smoky air, and drops them into the cup Anya holds. "Sip slow, Tom," Anya urges, holding the cup to his lips. Slowly now. The coughing subsides gradually, leaving the old man trembling, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. He sips the infused water, his breath still shuddering. The crisis passes, but the vulnerability of exposed lingers in the air, thick as the smoke. One frail body, one sickness deepened by cold, could unravel the careful balance. It reminds them all, even the children now blinking in the firelight, of how thin the line is between warmth and disaster. The fragile thread. Mara, her small face pale in the dimness, reaches out and takes old Tom's gnarled hand. She doesn't speak. She just holds it, her small warmth against his cold, papery skin. Alara, now fully awake but sensing the gravity, moves closer to her mother, pressing against Anya's side. Gareth remains crouched beside Tom, a solid, reassuring presence, until the old man's breathing steadies and his trembling lessens. Grandmother Agnes watches, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Back to the warmth, old plowman," she says softly, but with a tone that brooks no argument. "The colt's fingers found a hold in your chest. Let the fire burn them out." Her words are both instruction and incantation. The circle closes. Slowly, carefully, the cottage settles once more. Tom is helped back into the nest, surrounded by the shared warmth of the others. Mara stays close to him, her small hand still resting near his. Alara eventually drifts back toward sleep, lulled by her mother's steady heartbeat and the renewed crackle of the fire. Gareth returns to his post by the hearth, but his watchfulness feels heavier now, charged with the nearness of loss they've just witnessed. He feeds the fire another piece of precious oak. The vigil renewed. Anya takes over the stirring of the pot grandmother prepared earlier. Water, the last scraps of salted pork fat, a handful of dried peas, and coarse barley grains. It's not yet dawn, but the deepest cold is upon them. They will need this inner warmth soon. The simple act of preparing food, of tending the simmering pot, is an anchor, a reaffirmation of life continuing. The smell of the cooking porridge, simple and vital, begins to weave through the cottage again, mingling with wood smoke and sheepskin. Promise of sustenance. Grandmother Agnes sits near the fire now, her shawl drawn tight. She looks into the flames, her face unreadable. Is she remembering other winters, other frail breaths caught in the icy air? Other circles huddled against the dark? Her hands resting in her lap are clasped tightly. Not in fear, beautiful dreamers, but in a fierce, quiet determination. The determination that has seen generations through the long night, she begins to hum. A low, wordless melody, ancient, soothing. It's not a song for sleepers now, but a song for the watchers. A song for the fire. A song for the stubborn persistence of life in the face of the frozen void. It weaves through the crackle of the flames, through the soft sighs of the settling sleepers, through the watchful silence of Gareth and Anya. The old song, listen, beautiful dreamers, beneath grandmother's hum, beneath the fire's conversation, beneath the wind's endless sigh outside. Can you hear it? The first faint, almost imperceptible change. The absolute blackness beyond the smoke hole is softening, not into light, not yet, but into a shade less profound. The crushing weight of the deepest cold is still there, but it feels poised, as if the night itself is holding its breath, waiting. The stars seem to burn just a little less fiercely. The long, silent watches are nearing their end. Dawn, that fragile promise whispered by grandmother's story, is gathering its strength somewhere far beyond the frozen hills. The shields have held, the fire burns, the circle endures. Rest now, deeper still within this hard-won warmth. The darkest hour is passing. Can you feel it, beautiful dreamers? That subtle shift in the fabric of the night? The crushing, star-filled blackness beyond the smoke hole hasn't vanished, but it has thinned, like dark cloth worn translucent at the elbows. It's not white, not yet. It's a softening. A reluctant yielding of the darkest hour. The cold remains, fierce as a wolf's fang, but its bite feels different now. Less like an endless void pressing in, more like a final desperate grip before surrender. This is the gray return, the world holding its breath before the slow exhalation of dawn. Inside the cottage, the change is felt in weary bones and watchful eyes. Gareth, still kneeling by the hearth, feels the slight lessening of the icy pressure against the walls, almost as a physical relief, though the air remains bitterly cold. He adds the last of the carefully rationed dung cakes to the fire, now a modest but steady blaze. The flames cast long, trembling shadows that seem less menacing, more like familiar companions in the fading dark. His vigil is nearing its end, but the cost is etched deep in his face, lines of exhaustion carved by the long, silent hours, eyes red-rimmed from smoke and strain. The sentinel's weariness. Anya, stirring the thickening porridge in the iron pot, pauses. She lifts her head, not towards the smoke hole, but towards the heavy hide curtain over the door. Her ears, attuned to the subtle language of the night, catch it, a change in the wind's voice. The mournful, predatory howl has diminished, replaced by a softer, colder sigh. It's the sound of the world settling, the great beast of winter drawing breath before another day of dominion. She meets Gareth's gaze across the fire. No words pass, but the shared understanding is profound. The worst of the night is over. We held. Silent acknowledgement. In the bed nook, the stirring begins in earnest. The increased fire warmth, the subtle shift in the air, the faint, pearly grayness beginning to seep into the cottage. They pull the sleepers back from the depths. Little Tom wakes first, blinking owlishly in the gloom. He doesn't cry, but a small, plaintive sound escapes him. Mama? A question mark hanging in the chilly air. Alara shifts, pushing sheepskins away from her face, her eyes wide and confused for a moment before settling on the familiar shapes of the hearth, her parents. Old Tom groans, a sound of deep-seated ache, as he tries to move stiffened limbs. Mara is already sitting up, her small form tense, watching, waiting for cues, the slow awakening. Grandmother Agnes is already upright, her shawl wrapped tightly. She moves with a stiffness that speaks of the cold's deep penetration into ancient joints, but her eyes are sharp, scanning the room. The water, she says, her voice rasping like dry parchment. It's not a question, but a command. Anya nods, lifting the heavy wooden lid from the water pail near the door. Beneath, the thin skim of ice has thickened overnight into a solid milky white disk. She takes the iron ladle and strikes it sharply. A crack splinters across the surface. She breaks the ice into chunks, lifting them out, revealing the dark, frigid water beneath. The first task, breaking the ice. Alara, Anya says softly, bring the small pot. Her daughter scrambles from the nest, shivering as her feet touch the icy earth floor, and fetches a smaller, blackened pot. Anya carefully ladles some of the unfrozen water from beneath the ice into it. She places it near the edge of the hearthstones where the radiating heat is strongest. It will take time to warm. Water is life, but cold water on an empty stomach in this cold is a shock the body can ill afford. Preparing the thaw, Gareth rises slowly, his muscles protesting with loud creaks. He stretches a deep, bone-weary motion, then moves towards the door. Not to open it yet, that would invite a killing gust, but to inspect the seal. He checks the heavy hide curtain, pressing its edges more firmly against the wooden frame where frost has formed intricate, feathery patterns. He runs his hand along the bottom, ensuring no gap lets in the deadly draft. His breath plumes thickly in the air before him, a visible reminder of the lingering freeze. Securing the threshold, the gray light strengthens minute by slow minute. It seeps through the tiny gaps around the shutters, no longer the absolute blackness of the deepest watch, but a pale, watery luminescence. It paints the sleeping faces in the neck with a soft, ethereal light, highlighting the exhaustion, the vulnerability, but also the simple fact of their survival. Little Tom crawls out of the sheepskins, drawn by the movement near the fire. He stumbles on stiff legs towards Anya, burying his face against her skirts, seeking warmth and comfort. She rests a hand on his head, her stirring never ceasing. The comfort of presence. Grandmother Agnes moves to the small, shuttered window, not opening it, but pressing her ear against the cold wood. Listening, beyond the sigh of the wind, another sound emerges. Faint, distant, but distinct. The brittle crunch of footsteps on frozen snow. Then another, and another. A door creaking open somewhere nearby, the sound shockingly loud in the frozen stillness. The muffled cough of a neighbor. The village is stirring. A weary communal sigh rising from beneath the snow. The village awakes. They made it through, Gareth murmurs, the words thick with his own exhaustion and a dawning relief. It wasn't guaranteed. Every winter night held the potential for silence where there should be sound come dawn. The shared sounds are a fragile benediction, the communion of survival. The water in the small pot begins to steam gently. Grandmother Agnes takes charge now, her movements precise despite her stiffness. She retrieves her small bundle of dried herbs again, more coltsfoot for Tom's chest, a different, sweeter smelling herb, maybe chamomile, for the general infusion. She crumbles them into the warming water. The sharp, clean scent of herbs cuts through the lingering smoke and the animal smell of the skins, a breath of remembered summer, of healing. The keeper's remedy. Anya lifts the ladle from the large pot. The porridge is thick, hearty, clinging to the wood. It's ready. The smell, simple and sustaining, fills the cottage more potently now, mingling with the herbal steam. It's the smell of endurance rewarded, of strength being replenished. Time to break fast, she announces, her voice firmer now, carrying the authority of the new day's beginning, the call to sustenance. Bowls are gathered. The small group shuffles closer to the hearth's warmth, movement slow, bodies still heavy with cold and the residue of the long night's tension. Little Tom sits on Gareth's lap, his small hands held out towards the fire. Alara helps Mara hold her bowl steady. Old Tom accepts his from Anya with trembling hands, but his eyes are clearer than they were in the terror of the coughing fit. Grandmother Agnes hands Tom his infused herbal water first. Sip this slow, old plowman. Warm the cold corners inside. Her tone is gentle but firm. He obeys, the warm liquid seeming to ease the tightness in his chest almost immediately. The circle gathers. They eat in near silence, the only sounds the scrape of spoons on wood, the soft crackle of the fire, and the increasing sounds of life from outside. More footsteps, a distant voice calling out, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of someone beating snow from a garment against a wall. The porridge is hot, filling. You can feel its warmth spreading outwards from the core, pushing back the last clinging tendrils of the night's chill, fortifying weary limbs. It's more than food. It's fuel for the day's first battle, facing the frozen world outside. Fortification. As they eat, Gareth's gaze keeps drifting to the covered doorway. The light around the edges of the hide curtain is definitely brighter now, a pale silvery gray. The anticipation is a tangible thing, the need to know what the dawn reveals, the need to begin the day's labor, fetching fresh water from the well, if it isn't frozen solid, checking on the livestock huddled in their byre, perhaps venturing to the woods for more fuel if the paths are passable. Survival doesn't pause with the dawn. It merely changes its form, the weight of the day ahead. Grandmother Agnes finishes her porridge and carefully sets the bowl aside. She looks around at the faces illuminated by the strengthening gray light and the fire's glow. We weathered the wolf's hour, she states, simply. It's not boasting. It's an acknowledgement, a testament to the shields they raised, the tended fire, the shared warmth, the stories that held despair at bay, the unspoken care that mended the fragile thread. The sun remembers its promise. It climbs. Her words are quiet, but they land with the weight of prophecy. the old wisdom spoken. Finally, the moment comes. Gareth sets his empty bowl aside and stands. Anya moves to lift the heavy bar securing the door, a thick, rough-hewn beam of oak slotted into brackets on either side. Gareth takes hold of the stiff, frozen edges of the hide curtain. He takes a deep breath, bracing himself. The children watch, wide-eyed. Old Tom shivers, pulling his own blanket tighter. Anya lifts the bar. Gareth pulls the curtain aside just enough to peer out, his body blocking the worst of the expected gust. The cold that rushes in is breathtaking. It's a physical blow, sharp and dry, stealing the air from their lungs for a second. It carries the scent of pure ice, of frozen earth, and the clean, brutal emptiness of the deep snow. But it also carries light, gray, diffuse, winter light flooding the entrance. Gareth steps partially outside, his frame filling the doorway. He looks left, then right. Anya moves to stand beside him, peering out over his shoulder. What do they see, beautiful dreamers? A world utterly transformed. Snow lies deep and unbroken, sculpted by the wind into smooth, treacherous dunes against the cottage walls and fences. The sky is a vast, featureless expanse of pale, washed-out gray. The skeletal trees stand like frozen sentinels, every branch and twig coated thickly in hoarfrost, glittering dully like millions of tiny diamonds. Smoke rises from other cottage chimneys, thin and gray against the pallid sky. The village is a cluster of white mounds under the vast, indifferent winter sky. It's a landscape of breathtaking, silent beauty and profound, unyielding hardship. Facing the frozen world, deep, Gareth mutters, his voice rough. Deeper than yesterday, he scans the sky. No new snow falling. Winds dropped. Anya nods, her eyes assessing the snowdrifts blocking the path to the well. The well bucket will be frozen solid, she predicts grimly. Melting snow for water would be slow, fuel-consuming, and the buyer, she doesn't finish. Checking on their single cow and few chickens is vital. Had the crude shelter held against the wind, had the shared body heat of the beasts been enough? They step back inside, pulling the hide curtain shut quickly, but the brief glimpse has imprinted itself on everyone. The sheer scale of the white silence outside, the monumental task of simply existing within it for another day. The fragile bubble of warmth inside the cottage feels even more precious, more desperately necessary. The daunting day. Gareth turns back to the room. His exhaustion is still there, deep in his bones, but overlaid now with the practical focus of the new day. Anya seated the beast. Take Alara. Break a path, slow and careful. Check the roof's load too. He turns to old Tom, still huddled by the fire. Tom, rest. Tend the fire. Keep it steady. His eyes find Grandmother Agnes. Gran, the water. Snow melt, I fear. He looks at the dwindling fuel stack, then at Mara. Mara, help Gran gather clean snow in the big pot. Pile it high. Finally, he looks down at little Tom, clinging to his leg. You, little spark, stay by the fire. Warm Grandfather Tom's toes. It's a small attempt at lightness, a flicker of warmth in the face of the daunting day. The instructions are given. The roles assigned. The communal machine of survival clicks into its daytime rhythm. There is no fanfare, no celebration beyond the simple fact of being alive. Only the weary acceptance of the work that must be done, the cold that must be endured, the shields that must be maintained until the true sun climbs higher and the promise grandmother spoke of becomes more than just a hope held in frozen hearts. The division of labor. Anya pulls on extra layers, patch tunic over dress, thick leg wraps, a coarsely woven hood over her headscarf. Alara bundles up similarly, her small face serious with the weight of responsibility. Gareth hands Anya the heavy wooden shovel they use for snow. It's more like a crude paddle. Slow steps, he reminds her, his eyes holding hers. The unspoken fear of hidden drifts of ice beneath the snow hangs between them. She nods, touches his arm briefly, then turns to the door. Stepping into the white, Grandmother Agnes is already directing Mara, pointing to the cleanest snow piled just outside the door where the wind had scoured it. Mara, wrapped in a spare shawl far too big for her, takes the large pot and carefully steps just outside the threshold, scooping armfuls of the pristine, powdery snow. Her breath plumes thickly in the frigid air. Grandmother watches from the doorway, a frail but unwavering presence. Gathering the frozen water, Gareth takes one last look at the fire, now burning steadily under Old Tone's watchful, wary gaze. He checks the axe hanging near the door, its blade nicked, but still sharp. Wood. They would need more wood. The forest, frozen and silent, awaited. He pulls his own hood low over his forehead, his face grim. The cold outside was a different beast from the cold of the watchful night. It was active, demanding, ready to sap strength with every step. He shoulders the axe, facing the frozen forest. And inside, little Tom sits dutifully by Old Tom's feet, his small hands resting on the old man's booted toes. "Warming them, Grandpa Tom?" he asks solemnly. Tom manages a weak smile, a rattle in his chest. "Aye, lad, aye, doing a grand job." The fire crackles, consuming the last of the easily accessible fuel. The pot of snow begins to melt sluggishly near the hearthstones. The cottage holds its breath, suspended between the survival of the night and the arduous labor of the day. The gray light grows stronger, washing the room in a cold, clear luminescence. The shields held through the dark, beautiful dreamers. Now, under the pale eye of the winter dawn, the long, slow work of enduring begins anew. Feel the weight of their weariness, the depth of their quiet courage. Let it settle over you like the softest blanket. The fire burns, the snow melts, the circle endures. Rest now, deeper still, within the fragile warmth of their perseverance. The pale winter sun, a weak coin of silver lost in the vast gray vault of the sky, has long since dipped below the frozen tree line, beautiful dreamers. Its passing leaves not the profound blackness of the deep night watch, but a thick, icy twilight, heavy and still. The cold, momentarily held at bay by the sun's feeble presence, rushes back with a vengeance, reclaiming the snow-loved world with its silent, crystalline grip. Back within the cottage walls, The air bites sharply once more. The brief warmth won by the day's labor. The fetching of water melted from clean snow. The tending of shivering beasts, the gathering of precious frozen wood, has already bled away, leaving the familiar watchful chill. Gareth's shoulders open the heavy door, letting in a gust of frigid air and a swirl of fine, icy snow. He stumbles inside, laden with an armful of deadfall branches, brittle, frost-covered offerings from the frozen forest. His face is raw, wind-whipped, his beard crusted with ice. Behind him, Anya and Alara follow, their own arms filled with smaller kindling. They move stiffly, exhaustion etched into every line of their bodies. Anya's cheeks are flushed scarlet from the cold, her eyes shadowed with deep weariness. Alara's small hands are red and chapped, clutching the wood like a precious burden. They dump their loads near the hearth without ceremony, the wood clattering onto the hard earth floor. The weary return. No words are spoken, none are needed. The shared exhaustion, the shared relief at being back within the fragile sanctuary, hangs thick in the smoky air. They stamp snow from their boots, the sound loud in the quiet. Little Tom rushes from the bed nook, throwing his arms around Anya's legs. "Mama, cold." He whimpers, burying his face in her skirts. Anya rests a trembling hand on his head, drawing what little comfort she can from his small warmth. The anchor of home, old Tom, who had tended the fire faithfully throughout the day, feeding it small, measured pieces of the dwindling fuel, nods wearily from his stool. The fire burns low but steady, a testament to his vigil. Grandmother Agnes is stirring another pot of porridge. Dinner tonight, mostly barley and water, the salted pork fat long gone. The smell is plain, unadorned sustenance. Mara quietly helps, fetching water warmed by the hearth for grandmother to use. The unbroken rhythm. Gareth moves immediately to the hearth, kneeling stiffly beside it. He feeds the fire a few of the smaller, drier branches Alara brought. They catch quickly, flaring with a brief, bright warmth that feels almost shocking after the bone-deep chill of the forest. He arranges the larger pieces of deadfall carefully around the edges, where the heat will slowly thaw the ice coating them, preparing them to burn later in the long watch. His movements are slow, deliberate, conserving the last dregs of his strength. Tending the tiny sun again, Anya peels off her outer layers, her fingers numb and clumsy. She helps Alara out of her frozen wraps, rubbing the girl's small, icy hands between her own, trying to coax feeling back. Alara leans heavily against her mother, her eyes already half closed with exhaustion. The sheer effort of existing in the frozen world, even for a few hours, has drained them utterly. The cost of endurance. Grandmother Agnes ladles the thin porridge into bowls. "Eat," she commands, her voice holding a note of iron beneath the weariness. Warm the core. They gather, as they did the night before, shoulder to shoulder near the hearth's radiant circle. The warmth from the fire and the hot food is a balm, sinking into stiff muscles and frozen bones. They eat in near silence, the scrape of spoons the only sound beyond the fire's crackle and the wind's renewed sigh outside. It's not feasting, it's refueling. fortifying the vessel for the night ahead, the communion of necessity. As the last spoonfuls are scraped, Gareth's gaze sweeps the cottage. He sees the meager pile of thawing wood. He sees the half-full pot of melted snow water. He sees the exhaustion etched on every face, young and old. He sees old Tom, still pale, still breathing with that faint, worrying rattle deep in his chest. A grim calculation runs behind his eyes. Fuel, water, strength, health. The margins are thinner than yesterday. The night will be just as long, just as cold. The keeper's tally. He meets Anya's eyes. She gives a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. They don't need words. The understanding is absolute. They made it through the day. They brought back what they could. Now they must face the night again. Conserve, tend, share, endure. The strategy hasn't changed. Only the depth of their fatigue. The unspoken strategy. Grandmother Agnes rises, her joints protesting audibly. To the nest, she instructs, her voice softer now. The stones need warming. Anya and Alara begin the familiar ritual. They gather armfuls of the remaining straw, fluffing it, spreading it thickly in the stone-lined pit. Gareth carefully selects stones warmed near the fire's edge, not scorching hot, but holding a deep, comforting warmth. He places them strategically beneath the straw layer. Anya spreads the sheepskins, then the thick woolen blankets. Rebuilding the sanctuary. Little Tom is already half asleep in Anya's arms, lulled by the food and the fire's warmth. She carries him to the nest, settling him deep into the warm straw. Alara follows, crawling in beside him, pulling a blanket up to her chin with a sigh that seems to come from her very soul. Mara helps old Tom shuffle to the edge. He lowers himself with a groan, sinking gratefully into the yielding warmth. Mara tucks the blankets around him before slipping in beside him, a small, silent guardian, seeking the burrow. Gareth and Anya remain by the hearth. Grandmother Agnes settles back onto her stool, watching the flames. The silence stretches, filled only by the fire's murmur and the wind's lament. It's not a peaceful silence, beautiful dreamers. It's the silence of held breath, of resources stretched thin, of bodies pushed to their limits. The cold seems to press closer, sensing their weariness. The weight of the coming dark. Anya stirs. She looks at Grandmother Agnes. Will you tell it again, Gran? She asks, her voice barely a whisper. The promise? Grandmother Agnes looks into the fire. Her faded eyes reflect the dancing flames, holding depths of memory and resilience. She doesn't answer immediately. Then she takes a slow breath. And when she speaks, her voice is low, rhythmic, weaving a spell against the encroaching night. Long ago, she begins, the familiar words falling into the quiet like stones into a still pool. When the hills were young and winter was a giant made of ice and hunger. She tells it again, the brave maiden, the starlight cloak. The frozen path, the ice castle, the stolen crystal heart, the shattering promise carried on the wind. But tonight her voice holds a different timbre, a deeper certainty, a weary defiance. Stories like armor forged anew, As the ancient tale unfolds, Gareth rises silently. His nightly vigil begins. He checks the banked edges of the fire. He presses moss into a draft near the door discovered during the day. He listens to the wind's voice, gauging its intent. His face is grim, etched with exhaustion, but his movements are steady, resolute, the keeper's resolve renewed. Anya listens to the story, but her eyes are on her children in the nest, on Tom's peaceful, sleeping face, on Alara's slow, even breaths, on Mara's watchful eyes, still open, listening to grandmother's words. She sees old Tom's chest rise and fall, the rattling less pronounced now, perhaps eased by the warmth and the rhythm of the tale. A profound wave of weariness washes over her, deeper than bone tiredness. It's the weariness of constant vigilance, of endless calculation, of love measured in fuel and food and warmth. But beneath it, fierce and unyielding, burns the simple, vital flame of protection. She would stand between them and the frozen void forever if she must. Grandmother Anna's story reaches its climax, and the crystal shattered. She whispers, her voice gaining strength. Not into nothing, beautiful dreamers sleeping here with us, but into 1,000 sparks. Each one a whispered oath on the wind, a seed in the thawing earth, a note in the song of meltwater. The sun will return. She lets the words hang in the firelit air, a tangible shield against the dark pressing at the walls. The promise reaffirmed. The cottage settles. Alara's breathing deepens into sleep. Mara's eyes finally close. Old Tom's head nods. Little Tom sighs, a sound of pure, unconscious contentment. Anya feels her own eyelids growing heavy, the rhythmic crackle of the fire and grandmother's presence weaving a spell. Even her fierce watchfulness cannot resist. She leans back against a sack of grain, her body finally yielding to the exhaustion. The surrender to rest. Gareth watches them all. The sleepers in the nest. Anya finally resting. Grandmother Agnes, her eyes now closed, her head bowed slightly, perhaps in prayer, perhaps in her own light doze. He is the lone sentinel again, the guardian of the flame and the fragile circle of warmth. He feeds the fire a small piece of the thawed deadfall. The flames leap, casting his shadow, immense and protective, against the far wall. The vigil continues. Outside, the wind's sigh deepens, but it no longer sounds like a hungry wolf. Tonight, to the listeners within the cottage, wrapped in weariness and hard-won warmth, it sounds different. Like the sigh of the earth itself, like the slow, inevitable turn of the world towards the dawn that will come. The cold is still vast, the night is still long. The struggle is far from over, but within these humble walls, bound by shared breath, shared hardship, and shared stubborn hope, 10 souls have endured another day. They have gathered their strength. They have rebuilt their shields. They have whispered the promise against the dark. And so, beautiful dreamers, we leave them here, in the circle of stones, in the nest of straw and wool, in the embrace of the small, defiant flame. Gareth keeps his watch. Anya rests. The children sleep, safe in the fortress built not of stone, but of endurance and care. Grandmother Agnes holds the ancient wisdom, The wind sighs its lullaby outside the walls. The long night's heart beats on. But within the hearth's embrace, warmth, weariness, and the quiet pulse of life hold sway. Feel it now, my dear listeners. Feel the profound safety they fought so hard to create, not just for themselves, but somehow across the centuries for you. Feel the exhaustion that is earned, that is right, after a day of enduring your own unseen winters. Feel the deep, quiet courage in simply holding on, in tending your own inner flame, in gathering your own circle of warmth, be it memories, hopes, or the simple comfort of this moment. The fire crackles softly here in your own room, a distant echo of theirs. The wind outside your window sings a gentler song. The blankets around you are softer than sheepskin, warmer than wool. You have weathered your day. You have gathered your strength. Now let the shields fall gently. Let the vigil soften. Let the warmth, deep and sure, seep into your bones. You are held. You are safe. The promise whispers not just of a sun returning, but of rest, deep and healing, claiming you now. So close your eyes, beautiful dreamers. Let go of the weight. Drift on the side of the wind, on the rhythm of your own slowing breath. Sink down, down, into the soft, welcoming darkness behind your eyelids. Deeper than the deepest winter night, warmer than the fiercest hearth, safer than the strongest walls. Rest now. Let sleep weave its own cloak of starlight around you. The story is told. The fire burns low and steady. The circle is complete. Good night, my precious sparks. Sleep deep. Sleep warm. The dawn will take care of itself.